Alrighty.
Huh.
What's up, Christina?
Hi.
So, we're live right now. I'm practicing streaming online. So right now, anything you say is
Can be held against you in the court of law.
Exactly.
Good to know.
Chris.
Doctor Who is a woman. Doctor Who is a woman. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Do you hear about?
Cool.
I guess we'll talk about this on the podcast for a second or whatever. But it's very interesting. I mean, I don't know. Is that interesting? I don't know. I've never watched Doctor Who, so I have no idea.
Well, I mean, do you know the whole conceit? Like the whole idea is the fact that he's regenerated now 13 times, and he can regenerate into any sort of physical form that he wants to.
We're hear about this for so long from so many shitty people.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, Christina. Hi,
Christina.
Hi. Not much.
Christina does the 24 podcast with me.
Ah.
Yes.
Chris, it's been a long
They're
time.
very serious.
Seriously, man. It's been like eons.
It's been like a month since we recorded an episode together.
Seriously. A few things have happened since we talked last.
You left Disneyland.
I did indeed. I had my last day on Friday.
Wait, you worked for Disneyland?
I did. 8 years.
He was an actor.
Oh my
a
gosh.
Disneyland actor.
Doing what?
Actor.
What? Like all different characters, or?
Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah. There was a plethora. Jeez,
That's
Dylan,
so
just gave away all of my secrets. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wait, Chris,
Yeah,
we're
let's tell a
streaming
story.
online right now. By the way, I'm streaming this online, so I should say that right now.
Are you serious?
Yes. sorry. I guess I should warn you right off the bat. I don't think anybody's listening. I didn't warn anybody, and I didn't really tweet it out or anything like that, so I don't think anybody's listening. But it is. It is. Oh, Paul's listening. Shout out to Paul. What's up, Paul?
Hi, Paul.
Um,
How did Paul know?
Chat board I can see.
Two people are watching. All right, so I'm gonna try to ignore that though because it's distracting. So sorry, I won't. But I'll check in when Chris is blah 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 blah. I'll check in and check the comments. That's what's gonna happen when that's happening.
Is there a link that I can go to, Dylan, so that I can see the comments too? I want to.
Yeah, it's just the Watch and Talk.
Oh yeah.
The YouTube channel. Yeah, YouTube channel.
This is so exciting.
I know. I did this for Baby Driver, and then I completely forgot last week. But anyway, let's get started because we have.
Okay, sorry.
All right. I'm gonna record, so you don't have to record on your end, Chris.
All right.
Christina, let's sync it up.
All right.
1,
2.
Okay. All right. So I'll go first, and then Chris, and then Christina, you'll be third.
Okay, sounds
In no particular order. Welcome to the Watch and Talk. I'm Dylan Shuck.
I'm Chris Harwell.
And I'm Christina Vanderslice.
In this podcast, we're reviewing War for the Planet of the Apes, and you can hear all of our previous reviews at thewatchandtalk.com. Big shout out to our Patreon supporters. If you want to be a supporter of the show, you can go to patreon.com/thewatchandtalk. Big shout out to our premium supporters, Shakita, June, Endless Mike, and Kaka.
Woo woo.
Hey, Chris, have you ever struggled with a social media account?
Oh, every day.
Well, you don't have to do that ever again because we have CoinCrack. All you have to do is go to thewatchandtalk.com/CoinCrack, and you can boost your social media presence. I'm sure so many people are like, what does that mean? Just go check it out if you're curious. And big shout out to Ninth Link. Ninth Link designers are ready to listen to your business needs and create websites, applications, and email campaigns. Check them out at thewatchandtalk.com/9thlink. All right. Welcome, Christina. This is your first time on the Watch and Talk. You're my co-host on the 24 Rewatch podcast. So
Yes, thank you. Glad to be here.
We're excited to get you on here, and we've been planning this for a little while, so I'm glad you came.
All right.
And Chris, it's been a long time.
Seriously, life has been insanely busy, and tragically, one of the things that has been nixed for the last month has been coming on this delightful podcast and hanging out with my good friend Dylan Shuck and cool guests like Christina.
Yeah,
but it's awesome to be back. Seriously,
something happened with the Baby Driver review.
Yeah. So,
we scheduled around you.
Yep. Yes. You scheduled it around me. And I thought that was going to be a great time. And then
and after about 10 minutes of us waiting, I finally messaged you and said, "Hey, we're waiting." and this
And I was like,
blank like GIF from him immediately going,
okay,
and I'm
so
like,
I can actually break down what exactly happened that day. So I had every intention of meeting, and the day before.
very noble of you to have the intention to be on.
Yeah, oh yes, I was, and then I planned for it, all that kind of stuff. I told them a specific time, being the great person that I am, absolutely. And one of the reasons I was just telling Dylan and Christina this, that I left Disneyland. I had been employed with the Walt Disney Company for the last 8 years, and the reason that I left
So you have more time for the watch and talk?
exactly is because I got a new job, or was actually at that time applying to a new job. And kind of the last hurdle that I had to jump over got pushed back to that day, which was a phone conversation that I was waiting for.
Oh,
so,
man, of course, all is forgiven then, I guess.
It was a situation where the night before I was told, hey, they're going to call sometime around this time tomorrow morning, be ready for it, or tomorrow afternoon, be ready for it. I'm like, okay, great, sweet, sounds good. And at that point, everything else was blasted from my mind. And then so I'm sitting there waiting for this call. And I literally gotten a call from the secretary like maybe 10 minutes before you had texted me saying, hey, he's going to call here in the next 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, great. So I'm like ready to go. And then I get this message from Dylan like, hey, the watch and talk, yo. And I'm like, who? Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry.
So I don't know about this new job, but can you talk about it on the podcast or should we talk about it later?
We can definitely talk about it in the podcast. It's a really exciting thing. I will actually be. I'm presently living in Los Angeles County here in California, and I will actually be moving all the way over to Houston, Texas. I will be teaching at a university over there, teaching film. Surprise, surprise. I'll be teaching writing, directing, kind of like intro to production, as well as a George Lucas class. So. Very much looking forward to that. And
Congrats.
Life is going to be changing pretty dramatically here.
Still gonna have time for the watch and talk. The listeners are hoping.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They're on the edge of their seats. All right. Well, congrats, and we're glad to have you back. Let's start off with what we watched recently. We're not gonna do a top 5 list because we're at a little bit of time crunch today. So let's just talk about some things we watched recently. Actually, before we do that, I kind of want to briefly discuss the Emmy nominations.
Ooh. Leftovers again.
What?
Darn it. The leftovers just snubbed again.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing I said last year when the leftovers were snubbed. I know it wouldn't completely snubbed. They got Ann Dowd for a guest appearance role. That's the only nomination that leftovers got. The leftovers being snubbed by the Emmy says more about the Emmys than it does about the leftovers.
Sure.
I don't know why the Emmys just refuse to be a good award show, but they just refuse. It's more of a popularity contest than it is something good. The Emmys are not the Oscars of TV. The Emmys are just the same thing as the Teen Choice Awards to me at this point. I mean,
bam.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
There's two no-brainer nominations this year. One was Carrie Coon for The Leftovers. I know she got nominated for Fargo, but The Leftovers was just a complete no-brainer. And two, Michael McKean, who played Chuck on Better Call Saul, the brother.
Yeah.
No nomination for him.
Yeah, and you said that in our Better Call Saul review. You had said he deserved one.
Yeah, I thought most no-brainer thing ever. The thing was, Jonathan Banks, who plays Mike, got a nomination, but not Michael McKean. And I'm sorry, but this season that didn't deserve to be happy. He should have gotten the Emmy in the first season on that whole episode of his son. Yeah, that he was nominated for that, and we thought he was going to win. And I think he lost to. I don't remember who he lost to, but it was stupid.
Tyrion Lannister again.
I don't know if it was Tyrion. Maybe it was Tyrion. I was thinking in my head Tyrion, but I didn't say it out loud. So you saying
Mr. Dinklage.
And all respect to him, he's fantastic. But Jonathan Banks should have won that year. But this year should be Michael McKean. So anyway, it's just laughable at this point that the Leftovers snubbed so much because there's no more Emmy deserving show ever. I mean, not ever. I'm just saying it's as deserving to be in the conversation as any show that's ever been nominated, if you ask me. So it'd be like, I don't know, it'd be like the Oscars snubbing, Moonlight and La La Land last year or something like that. That's what it feels like to me. It's just laughable. So
It's dumb. It's dumb.
Any opinions on any of the Emmy nominations? The Emmy nominations are weird. There's so many acting nominations because there's for a comedy series, there's for a drama series, there's for a limited series, and there's lead and supporting for everything. It's hard to even keep track of all of the nominations. But Better Call Saul for drama series, Better Call Saul, The Crown, Handmaid's Tale, House of Cards, Stranger Things, This Is Us, and Westworld were all nominated. So. Two of those shows I do podcasts on, Westworld and Better Call Saul. Shout out to them.
Hey, that's probably why they were nominated. They just missed your Leftovers podcast.
Yes, I completely agree. So, have either of you guys watched The Handmaid's Tale?
I have not. I've heard divisive things. I've heard different things from different people. I've heard some people like it just takes forever to get anywhere. It's way too slow. I've heard from others that it's compelling and gorgeous and the acting's stellar and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I haven't seen it myself.
I watched the first half of the first episode, so I can't really report back. But I was engaged. I mean, not engaged enough to finish, but something came up. But I was completely engaged. Right, so John Booker on our Baby Driver review. You remember that episode, Chris?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He really pushed me toward it. So I'm gonna be reporting back on that show here pretty soon. But it was pretty interesting, and it was in the style of Dexter, how the voice of thought is the narration of the show. Which right. I think a lot of shows. There's a lot of shows or movies that would benefit from that. Sometimes you need to know what's going on in a character's head, and I think it would help in certain situations. So, like American Gods, that really needed a voice of thought narration in it, if you ask me, for its first season. But anyway, all right. So let's talk about some of the things we watched recently. I got two things to report on. First, new season of Curb Your Enthusiasm is coming out in October. Have you guys ever watched Curb Your Enthusiasm, or do you ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Watched a couple of seasons of it, yeah.
Christina, have you ever seen
it? Not me. No.
So do you even know what it's like or anything like that? Because I think you would love
vaguely.
Curb Your Enthusiasm. But basically, Larry David plays himself, a character of himself, but it takes place of his day-to-day life after Seinfeld was over. He was the creator of Seinfeld, or co-creator, and as soon as it ended, him just doing his random things, and him getting into whatever mischief he gets into, and he'll just be walking down the street and see something that bothers him, and then just start complaining about it. And it's completely hilarious to see how things unfold. Sometimes it's really frustrating because they can talk their way out of a situation, but they don't, because it just fits the comedy of the show. But the show debuted in 1999, and for it to have it's, I believe, 9th season, because they have obviously big long breaks in there. Obviously, if it's 18 years later, maybe the year 2000 I think is when it aired. But I plowed through the first 2 seasons of the rewatch, and I'm gonna keep watching that to catch up by the time the new season comes out, which is in October. So that's something I'm excited to be watching. Christina, you should check it out. It's on HBO Go. You can just watch the first episode and see what you think. I think that it's right up your alley, to be quite honest. But the only other thing I wanted to talk about was The Defiant Ones, the new documentary on HBO about Dr. Dre. And I have to say, it is so watchable. I watched the entire thing in one sitting. It's 4 episodes, and they're each an hour long. And a lot of it covers some of the stuff you've seen in Sarah Compton, but it covers a lot of stuff before and after it. And then it also covers his producer and the things that he went through, because he got to start working with Bruce Springsteen and working with John Lennon. And it's really interesting to see how their stories converge and where they go from there. It did turn into a Beats by Dre or Apple commercial by the end of it. But
gotta do what you gotta do.
The whole thing was so engaging. It's also funny too, because the producer only shows his wins, because he signed Nine Inch Nails and Gwen Stefani and Bush and Lady Gaga, and it just makes him look like a complete genius. When you got to think, they're only showing the good things that they did, and then they're like Beats by Dre and Eminem and 50 Cent and Dr. Dre, obviously, and all these things, but it obviously doesn't show many of his failures. But you just have to, take that in stride because that's the story they're telling. Another odd thing is they didn't talk about Dr. Dre because they covered their whole lives from being very young. They didn't discuss Dr. Dre's the death of his son, and that was very glaring to me because I was just anticipating that. I wanted to see them talk about that, but obviously there was something he wasn't willing to discuss on it, so they didn't talk about.
Did he talk about his brother?
Yes.
The death of his brother?
Yes.
Huh.
Talked about the death of his brother, but not the death of his son. So that's for some reason they didn't want to cover that. But spoiler alert for anybody who doesn't know the story of it. But anyway, I highly recommend it. It was really easy to watch. It's on HBO Go, and if anybody likes any of those, episodic documentary series or something like that, it's a lot of fun. So, yeah, Chris, what's a thing or two you've been watching?
I'm trying to think how I want to do this. I've been doing a lot of traveling recently, and when I travel, that's when I watch all my movies, and I have a huge list. Do you think it'd be more fun if I just ran through the list and just said the list and my star ratings? That sounds fun to me.
Sure.
I'm gonna do it. All right. I start with a gem of a film. I finally got around to watching Triple X: The Return of Xander Cage, which I gave 1.5 stars. It sucked. Don't watch it. I then watched the original Halloween, which was a delightful good time. I wasn't a horror film guy growing up, so I've been doing my darndest to watch all these original classics. I gave it 3.5 stars. Solid stuff.
What about Clown? Did you rewatch Clown?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite films. I will get to what my amazing Spider-Man, my Spider-Man Homecoming review in just a second. But my opinion of John Watts has changed, and I will tell you which direction it's gone in.
Well, real quick, I want to say that now that Spider-Man Homecoming came out, this movie that we're discussing is called Clown. I've discussed it all the time. I loved it. And it's on Netflix. It's a really crazy, gnarly horror movie. Same director that did Spider-Man Homecoming. And, nobody was talking about him. Nobody was talking about the movie. And when I first saw it, I was raving about it. Now that Spider-Man Homecoming come out, more people are going back and watching that. Nobody likes that movie except for me. I think I think how much I liked it sucked up the enjoyment of everybody else's. So I think I took all the enjoyment for that.
Your passion for it is impressive. I have to admit, it's kind of insane.
Movie. It's a gnarly horror movie. Anyway, continue.
I watched the Third Man with Orson Welles. It's a classic. It's a classic film noir. It's an amazing film. I gave it 4.5 stars. It's amazing. I watched The French Connection with Gene Hackman. Also a great film by the same director as The Exorcist. Super intense. It's excellent, gritty kind of. It's like the gritty. French Connection. Oh, it's great. It's great. Gritty cop film from the 70s. I gave 4 stars. I watched Bleed for This finally with what's his bucket from Whiplash.
Miles
Teller. It was fine. It was fine. I like the original, like the true story that it's based upon. I was just kind of underwhelmed by the directing and some of the writing. Gave it 3 stars. Finally watched Fruitvale Station because Ryan Coogler, who directed Creed, is the boss, and it was awesome. 4 stars. Watched The Conversation with Gene Hackman. This is a Francis Ford Coppola film. If ever you are wanting to do anything pertaining to audio on a film, watch this film. This is the best it gets. I finally got around to watching Sing, the delightful Matthew McConaughey. The entire film, literally the entire film, is in the trailer. All you have to do is watch the trailer, and you've seen the film.
It's like 230 original, or not original, but 230
covers
songs are in that movie or something like that. I'm like, wow, that's like 3 a minute.
It's crazy.
Something like that. No, it's not that crazy. Many. It's like 100, but it's mind-boggling. I haven't seen the movie, and I never plan to, but. This is a really weird shotgun way of firing through movies. Christina, we never do it like this, so this is very interesting.
I like it. it. I'm going with it.
This is very interesting.
Well, I watched a lot of movies traveling. I watched Network. Network is a special film on this list because I very, very, very rarely give a film a perfect score, and I gave Network a 5 out of 5.
My life has value.
It is good. It's just a very kind of satirical commentary on just network television and the state of our nation and world
and
and
how news.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I I watched a film called Smoke, which I'd never even heard of, but it's directed by Wayne Wang, which is a delightful name, and it stars Harvey Keitel and William Hurt, and it's just kind of a quiet little drama. It's excellent. I would definitely recommend it. 4 stars. I watched Gremlins. I hated it. Gremlins should die and burn. I hate it. It's stupid. Gave it 2 stars. I'm sorry. All you out there who love Gremlins, I didn't grow up with it. Never watched it. I thought it was dumb. Hated it.
This is so weird what we're doing right now.
I watched A Streetcar Named Desire. It was great. 4 stars. I watched Baby Driver. Woo! Loved it. So good. I love Edgar Wright. Everything that I wanted that film to be.
I really wish you were on that review because I was the negative person on that movie.
All right.
So anyway, maybe you get around to listen to the episode and hear my complaints about it. But
it made me happy. Grin from ear to ear. Give it 4 stars. And I watched Spider-Man Homecoming, which was awesome. I really love Spider-Man Homecoming. I thought John Watts as director crushed it. I was so impressed with the way that he and the rest of the studio was able to balance just so many of the things that film needed to be. It needed to be a Spider-Man standalone film. It needed to be kind of his introduction, really. I mean, yes, he was introduced in Civil War, but this was really his major introduction to this universe, and how he can actually fit into it was really going to be tested there. And I thought he did a great job. Give it 4 stars. And that's all I want to talk about.
What's the star grading system that you were doing?
I love it.
You're welcome.
Christina, you watched something recently that I don't even remember what you said, but you told me yesterday.
Oh, yeah. So I started watching Big Little Lies, and I missed kind of the wave of excitement about it. I don't know what I was doing and why I missed it, but I'm 6 episodes in, so I have 2 left. Probably going to wrap them up this weekend. And I think it's good. I think it's an interesting show, and I like that it's telling it from 3, female perspectives. And I have a lot of guesses. You know me. I like to think I know exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. So my prediction list has gotten pretty long, and I'm just waiting for the fruits of my labor here. I want to know who, what, when.
That show gave you so little, though, to make a prediction on that I was like, there's no point for me to even try to make it. That's where you start thriving.
That's worse, right? That's where I do my best work, is when I have little to go off of. So I've got, if I could, I can go over them with you later. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I love, obviously, the soundtrack is amazing. I signed up for Spotify Premium just because I wanted to listen to the soundtrack without any interruptions. So that's how good the soundtrack is. The music's great. Yeah, it's been a fun one to watch. And then actually 2 other things. So it's a podcast, but 30 for 30. I don't know if you guys saw that they started a podcast.
Oh no, I didn't know they started a podcast.
Oh, so they started a podcast, and I've listened to 3 episodes, so I highly recommend that. It's obviously documentaries about different sports kind of iconic moments. And so no, there's not a Lakers one. There's a Boston one. There's no Lakers. No Lakers yet. At least not that I've seen. But anyways, if you like 30 for 30, you'll love the podcast. It's great. It's like they range from 30 to an hour long, and just really good storytelling, very interesting. And then lastly, I want to watch, or have been hearing a lot about, Glow on Netflix. So I plan to watch that sometime in the near future. I don't know if you guys have heard,
I plowed that first season in 2 days. It's very easy.
Yeah, see, I'm slower than you. That's good.
Did you say you plan to watch it, or you?
I plan to watch it. I was just going to give you like a little teaser. Like I plan to watch that.
Okay. I haven't watched it yet. It was.
When I'm on here again in 3 months, I'll tell you about it.
Here's the thing. It was really easy to watch. I just never laughed out loud, like ever.
That's not good.
And so that's when I didn't realize that until like 5 episodes in. I was like, I haven't laughed at this at all. So it's not that kind of comedy, but it still was. I still was at next episode. I kept watching it. So I watched it pretty quickly and easily. So it's, but I also get in these modes where I feel like I need to watch something for the listeners, for the Washington Talk listeners. I need to watch this and be their royal
for the people.
So sometimes I get on a mission to watch something so I can report back before we record the podcast. So I do have to say,
very admirable of you.
So going back to what we were saying about all your rapid fire predictions. On our 24 podcast, she at one point will predict every single character is a bad guy, just so when there is a reveal, she can be like, "I told you that person is a bad guy." I'm like,
"That's hilarious."
You predicted the main character is a bad guy, so yeah.
Look, I get a sense of bad characteristics. I just share them. So if it comes up multiple times, then it comes up. I can't help that they have shady things going on multiple times throughout the episode.
Very, very admirable, Christina. Very admirable.
Love it.
All right, so let's get into our review, our main review of War for the Planet of the Apes. Let's talk about let's talk about let's talk about before we get to the movie. Talk about our relationship with the Planet of the Apes franchise. What movies have you seen? What movies do you like? How long has it been since you've seen them? How well do you remember them? I guess we'll start with you, Chris.
Yeah, I didn't grow up watching the Planet of the Apes films, the originals. I think the first one came out in 1968, if I remember correctly.
I remember when it first came out.
I'm sorry?
I was joking. I said I remember when it first came out, but
oh yeah, of course. Well, yeah, you've been around on this planet for a while, Don.
And
using moisturizer excellently well.
Yes.
I did watch it, I think, in college, and by that time, it was kind of like one of those things of like, Vader is Luke's father. You kind of just know the twist at the end.
Yep.
If you don't, good on you. It's just kind of in the zeitgeist. So I didn't have like a big whoa reaction to the end there. But it certainly made sense to me, the film, as far as why it was a big thing when it came out.
It had to have been massive, right? Could you imagine going to see that movie in the theater and being like, and I feel like this is a time where they didn't have massive twists like that, right? Like I thought about the twist a lot because I'm the same thing as you. When I finally saw it, I already knew the ending because it's in culture. It's just ingrained in culture. But still, I thought about it a lot, especially recently, about how that must have been such a crazy twist.
Yeah, so I watched that. I enjoyed it. I apparently didn't enjoy it enough to continue on and watch the rest of the original franchise, though. I just never got around to it. But I did in 2001 watch Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes with good old Marky Mark, which was delightful. It's funny because I do remember distinctly thinking the makeup in this film looks legit. The design work looks amazing. But at the same time, I felt like 2001 was one of the first years I remember going to the theaters with my brother and kind of walking out of a couple of films genuinely disappointed. Like, prior to that, movies were always these like fun going experiences where nothing could, like, even if it was bad, it was like you didn't think about the bad parts. You're going to just focus on the cool little scenes. But for me, it was kind of like almost like this like coming of age of like, wow, Planet of the Apes wasn't very good, and neither was Jurassic Park 3. Like, what is happening to my world right now? It was kind of this little mind-blowing experience. I would love to revisit Tim Burton's film. I thought that, the design works super cool. I want to believe that the ending twist makes some sort of logical sense, even though I don't think it does.
I don't think it needs to, though. I think that they just wanted to do a different...
Right, like, something crazy.
Yeah, and they're supposed to leave you going like, what the hell?
Yeah.
One thing I have to say, though, is... I love Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. And
nice.
I wrote...
why does that not surprise me?
I wrote an article for Hollywood Reporter recapping the first two of the reboot Planet of the Apes movies. So you can check that out if you want to check that out on HollywoodReporter.com. But I originally pitched it to him. I wanted to write an article on Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. And he nixed it. He was like, nope, you can't do that. And I was like, please, can I do that? And he's like, nope, you can do this, though. And I was like... okay, I'll take work, no problem. But I wanted to write one on that because I just felt like it would be, I don't know. I wanted a good excuse to rewatch it because I haven't seen it in a long time. But I do have at least a positive memory of that movie. So it's been a long time. So I'm sure if I watch it now, it would probably crush my soul to see that because nobody seems to like that. But I love the Tim Burton-ness of it, if that makes sense.
Sure. And then in 2011, Rupert Wyatt's Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Well, in 2010, the trailer started to come out, and I'm like, oh gosh, this is going to be horrible. Like, digital apes, like, come on, the ape makeup was so cool in Tim Burton's film. Why don't you do that again? James
Digital
Franco,
Apes
why the heck?
was my rap group in high school. So.
And then just the idea of James Franco being in a serious film was so stupid to me. And then I saw the film, and I'm like, wow, like, that was a solid, very emotional little piece of filmmaking. And of course, Andy Serkis, like we will talk about millions of times, I'm sure, just blew us all away with his performance as this ape. And I think what I liked about his performance in Rise, almost more than any of the other films, I mean, he rocks it in every single one of the films, but he was forced to be fully ape in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, as well as slowly mature into something that's a bit more sentient, a bit more human. And just seeing him so animalistic and seeing him adopt these personality traits of an ape was so impressive to watch. And yeah, the fact that James Franco could show up in a film and not be completely, eye rolling, because I at that time I was kind of like an anti-James Franco thing. I don't know why. I think I enjoyed him in the Spider-Man films, but then a lot of the stuff he had done since then I didn't like. I've come around. I feel like films like Pineapple Express and things like that.
He's become more of a comedic actor, like as time has gone on. It's like it's funny to think back that he was a serious actor at first, and I mean not a complete first. I think he's got a start on Freaks and Geeks.
I don't know if that was his first role, but that was definitely earlier on.
Yeah. And it's funny now, if you see the movie Why Him, well, first of all, don't see Why Him if you can, because it's just going to change your... It's like, I have to try to get that out of my mind and realize that he's a serious actor, but it's difficult with just how bad that movie is. It's just not funny and bad, and anyway.
Right. So yeah, watch Rise, enjoyed it. I thought it was a good start. And then Dawn came along, and Matt Reeves with his gorgeous direction and just belief in really pushing the envelope as far as providing for us photoreal CGI creatures, especially when a lot of big films these days just don't care to even try to do that, was just amazing. And I liked the way that he really stripped back a lot of the ape dialogue that was kind of actually in the original draft of the film, saying like, hey, like there's a certain point in time that we're skipping over. I know we want to get to the 1968 time period, but let's take our time developing this ape culture. And seeing him patiently kind of like develop that story was just really exciting in Dawn. And then that kind of just led me into War.
So I think I had the same experience with you. Well, when I was a teenager, I bought the DVD set, all 5 movies, because I hadn't seen them, and that I was at an age where I was like, I need to watch all the movies that I need to watch. And I watched the first one. I think I started the second one, and about like 10 minutes into it, I was like, ugh, what? Maybe I should do something else. And never watched them because they just come off as so bad. And the first one didn't. So I never watched them either. I only watched the first one. And then obviously had the exact same experience with you with the other ones. How would you rank the reboot movies? Would you put Dawn first and Rise second? Or for me, I think I would put Rise first and Dawn second.
Just between the two or between the three?
Between the two.
It's tough. I think there is something a little bit more conventional about the narrative of Rise that for some reason kind of touches me emotionally a bit more. But artistically speaking, I think far and away for me, Dawn is the superior film artistically as far as what he does. Yes. Cinematically and things like that. So they're pretty close. I think pretty interchangeable for me, honestly.
What about you, Christina? What's your experience with the Planet of the Apes franchise?
Yeah, so Dylan, I'm with you. I love the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes, and part of the reason why I was excited about the reboot was because of that film. Again, I'm with you also on the fact that I haven't seen it in years. Like, I probably only saw it in 2001, so it could be that I just have some positive memories about it, and it may suck all around in other ways. But when people talk about it negatively, I don't feel that way about it. So I was excited for the reboot because of that. And then these 3, as I've told you already, I love them. I think they did a fabulous job. I think the storytelling was great. I think the drama was great. It was emotional. I love emotional movies, and I just feel like it's interesting how I guess we'll get into this later, but like we're humans, and like in these movies, you really are rooting for, in my opinion, the apes, right? And I just think it's so interesting that they got us to feel that. And I think that's like a sign of quality work when you can get me to feel against like even who I am, or I guess this version of humans that is left or that they're fighting right now.
I literally have a note that says that. It's just like I can't believe I'm rooting against mankind. I'm like, destroy mankind. Let these. I'm like, wait a second, that's not good for me for the most part.
So I now it does make me want to go back and watch Tim Burton's, but I'm also someone who just has, I'm just a fan of Tim Burton. I know some people are and some people aren't, and I'm just one of those people that I am a fan of his work. So I think I am a little biased when it comes to things that he does.
He's doing the
because
Dumbo.
I like his
He's doing
stark
Dumbo,
storytelling.
the Dumbo remake for Disney.
Yeah. Interesting. That'll be interesting.
That's gonna be interesting. It's every time he picks something up, it sounds like it's gonna be interesting. Even though he's weird now. He's always been weird. He did freaking Beetlejuice. Yeah, how could you think of Beetlejuice? That's what I talked about last week for some reason, or we were talking about Michael Keaton films last week. I just can't. I still just can't fathom that Beetlejuice was a movie that was thought up and made. It's just such an odd movie. Anyway, real quick before we even start this, Chris. Is what's it called? Is 10:30 going to be a hard cutoff? Is there?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is.
Okay. All right. Let's get into it.
We can do it.
So, the plot summary for the movie is: after the apes suffer unimaginable losses, Caesar wrestles with his darker instincts and begins his own mythic quest to avenge his kind. So, we're going to start off with a non-spoiler review of the movie. And then we're going to go to a spoiler section afterward after we give our grades and stuff like that. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's safe to stick around and listen to. And so Chris, why don't you start off with your non-spoiler review? Real quick, too, before you start that, I'll take another timestamp. I don't want to rush it, so if we do, we're going to run into that time. If worst comes to worst, we can just stop it, let you off, and then Christine and I will finish off the conversation if we need to.
Cool. Sounds great.
So go ahead and start off your non-spoiler review of it.
Yeah. I walked into War of the Planet of the Apes extremely hyped. I really enjoyed the first two installments. I love Matt Reeves as a director. If you guys aren't aware of who Matt Reeves is, he's also done the original Cloverfield. He also did the remake of Let the Right One In, just called Let Me In, and I usually don't like remakes, and he crushed it on that.
He wrote Under Siege 2. Dark Territory. Classic, good stuff. You can't get wrong there.
And I just like his sensibilities. He's a very patient filmmaker. Very often when you think things might turn right, he tends to go left. And especially like I mentioned with Dawn, he enjoys exploring the elements of a story that you may not initially think would be interesting to explore. So again, like there's an excitement getting to that 1968 time period where you have these completely sentient apes that are walking on 2 feet and talking like humans. But after watching Rise, he said, "No, hey, I think there's a lot more to be explored before we get to that time period." But also it's interesting to note that with Dawn, his first film in this franchise, he was kind of dumped that entire film into his lap at the last second, and he had to make a lot of adjustments to kind of fit what he wanted at the last second. So I was excited to know that going into War, he had as much time as he wanted to kind of craft this narrative from the ground up and really do with it what he wanted to, which I think, as I kind of talk about it, I think was a lot of positive things came from it, and a couple of negative things too. I will say this right now. If you go into this film thinking that this is War for the Planet of the Apes, you might be slightly disappointed. This is like I mentioned already, he likes to go left when you might think to go right. The real war that's happening in this film is really within the lead character's soul and mind, Caesar. This is the character that we've been journeying with, and kind of through whose eyes we've seen this world from film 1 until now. And because of that, we relate to him. So even as he's an ape, we actually find ourselves identifying, like Dylan and Christina were just saying, identifying with him even over the humans. And what's great about that is originally we kind of identified with his purity and the fact that he was the underdog, he was the abused animal, quite literally, that had to rise up and say no. And then in the second film, he was. Exactly. Such a great moment. Oh, my gosh.
Except it's before it was the cheesiest, "Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape." The cheesiest delivery of that line. And I know they wanted to
Draco
put that
Malfoy,
in.
Tom Felton.
Yeah, I know they wanted to put that in because the Charlton Heston line, but it was so bad. Ugh. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But again, you walked into this film even as Caesar had to make some hard decisions in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. If you haven't seen the film, I won't spoil it. He still seemed to make the right decisions and do things from a pure, upstanding place. And so the war that really rages in this film is him having to continue to wrestle with the fact that maybe he's not as pure, and us realizing that he's maybe not as pure in his motivations as as we maybe thought he was in the first two films. When certain horrible things happen in this film, he really is tested and forced to confront, okay, am I carrying out these actions for myself, or am I carrying out these actions for the sake of this entire, civilization, this species that I'm the leader of? And so that's the kind of journey that he's going on in the film, and it takes its patient time kind of delving into it. So he has, this, you might think it's this all-out war film, but it kind of becomes a prison break film at some points. And I really enjoyed that. And along with that, Matt Reeves ensured that he would not only was he taking us to new kind of places emotionally, but he's also taking us to a bunch of new places visually too, like into the snow, and again constantly just saying, I defy you to look at these creatures and think that they're not real. And it's ridiculous, even from my very critical critic and filmmaker eye that's constantly judging CG and going, oh, that looks a little bit fake, and the
Chris,
beast
how
from
much, how much time did they spend on close-ups of these apes?
Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. Like there's no shame. It's unashamed. Like they're smashing
insane amount of
close
close-ups
as possible into the close-ups of these apes. And I honestly, there was one shot the entire film, and I'm like, okay, I can kind of see the texturing's not perfect there. Everything else for me was like flawless. And I don't say that lightly. Like, it's ridiculous how amazingly real these apes look. And if you go and see the film for any reason, go and see it for that. I mean, it's outstanding what the artists are able to do. And I talked about this in the article that I wrote for the Hollywood Reporter, that I really appreciated about the Planet of the Apes franchise, was just the fact that as compared to a lot of other franchises, they never stopped pushing the envelope as far as photorealism goes. Even in the Marvel franchise, a franchise that I do like, I can honestly see a downwards trajectory of the realism of Iron Man's suits from the first film to like Age of Ultron. It's like he looks less realistic in his suit in Age of Ultron than he does in the first Iron Man. It's like, why? It's like, well, the studio realized that the audience doesn't care as much about that, and they'll still go pay bucket loads of money to see it, even if they invest less money into making it look photoreal, which is stupid and annoying. But here, every single film it was a big step up as far as the photorealism goes, and that definitely shows here.
You can tell they're pushing technology for this movie. Like, you can tell that because of this movie, technology is progressing. Like, you can tell that cinema is getting better because of these movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Could you say that for any? Maybe some people could, but I couldn't say that for any Marvel movie. I feel like Marvel movie is adopting whatever current technology is happening, and they've probably made advances, so it's probably not fair. But I feel with Planet of the Apes that they are setting the example for future films.
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, I won't make too many judgment calls on Marvel because I haven't really thought about that as much, but I definitely feel like for Planet of the Apes, it definitely feels like there is a desire to immerse the audience completely in the story that they're telling. And when you have indeed your entire kind of leading cast being these CG creations, it's of utmost importance for our ability to connect to them, that they be photoreal. And along with that, I really just appreciated that Matt Reeves also took the time to bring in a variety of tones and different feelings. So yeah, Caesar is he's a very not gloomy character, but he's very serious. He has a very serious mission, and so I thought Reeves very smartly brought in a couple of different flavors with this young girl named Nova, who's a kind of a human character that we're introduced to. She brings some like fun, purity, and innocence to it. And then this Steven Zahn bad ape character. I thought his comedy was great. I was really a little bit nervous when I initially encountered the character in the film. I felt like he might become a little bit one-noted and kind of just silly.
He could have been Jar Jar Binks.
But absolutely, that's a perfect way to describe it. He rode that line. He rode that line.
Completely worked. And at first I was like, "Ooh, this is weird. Is this going to continue like this?" And then somehow Steve Zahn made it work. One thing to say, just like a voice actor, sometimes when I'm watching a Disney cartoon or whatever, I'm really distracted because I'm trying to figure out the person's voice, right? The visual effects are so good in this that you're trying to figure out who the person is by the digital makeup.
Yeah, like the movement.
I was trying to figure out who that was because of the makeup. You couldn't because of the voice. The voice is impossible to figure out who it was. But I was like, I know this is somebody, and I was trying to figure out who it is. Obviously, that's impossible too because it's an ape makeup over the person. But it's just interesting. That's the first time I think in a movie I was trying to figure out who it is without any information with the voice because the voice was so obscured. But anyway. Yeah.
So yeah, I just appreciate it, and I think part of the reason that the Stephen Zahn character works so well is because the film is so gritty and dark. He really brings some unneeded levity in moments where you're just, oh gosh, I needed that laugh, I needed that kind of like uplifting moment. And they kind of, just to close things out for me, I really liked just in general what Matt Reeves continues to do thematically with these films. And I'm definitely not going to spoil it, but what he does with some of the developments in this world, and what's happening to apes and humans and things like that. I felt like it's simple, honestly, but it certainly is a commentary on how we as a species interact with different races, different genders, different religions, and
different nationalities.
Different nationalities. It's different sexual preferences. It's just it's a commentary on all of those things. And again, it's not a super deep one, but it does it well, and it's bold enough to do that in this world, and I appreciate that. I appreciate when a film is able to do that, and to do it in a way that isn't just kind of cheesy and it hitting you over the head, and it actually works in the context of this film as a narrative through line, not just as a kind of an overarching thematic idea. And I thought it worked. I think one of the things that I felt like was a bit of a drawback for the film was I felt like I missed, because originally I can't remember their names now, but there was a couple that wrote Rise for the Planet of the Apes, and then they wrote the first draft on Dawn, and they didn't have any writing credits on War. And I think I missed their presence as writers in this film. I felt like there were a few story beats that were just a little bit too patient. I feel like that the film liked to milk moments maybe just a little bit longer than they needed to be milked. Again, that's just Matt Reeves and his directorial taste wanting to really draw things out. That kind of just pulled it back just a little bit for me. But again, just a little bit. So ultimately, I really, really like the film, and I'm going to give it an A-.
All right. Christina, what are your basic thoughts on the movie and letter grade?
Yeah, so I already kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'm someone who's really drawn into kind of the drama, the emotional strings, the empathy. That part of a movie is what gets me. I'm the person that cries on commercials. Like, I just love that. No, I'm not lying.
She's a person who doesn't cry in real life, though, but she'll cry for a commercial.
Second commercial.
Yeah.
So I went into the movie assuming that I wasn't going to like it as much as the other two, because it was the war part of the story. And for me, as you know, in 24, I'm not big on the war part of things, the fighting, that part of movies. It's not as entertaining for me as the emotional drama storytelling side of it is. So I was actually pleasantly surprised that I got the opposite of what I think some people will go into it for the war, and I went into it for the story, and I got the story. And so I was really excited about that. And then, like Chris had mentioned, you start to find out that the war isn't even just this like physical war. It's the internal war that he's going through. So that became really interesting to me, and I love that part of it.
Do you think that War is the right title for this? War for the Planet of the Apes is the right title for this?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think it sets people up to assume, if you love battle movies and you think you're going to go in and see this like raging battle, I think it sets them up for a little bit of disappointment there.
I agree.
But if you love the story of the Planet of the Apes, and I think, as Chris mentioned, I didn't really even think about it that way until he said it, but it's like, well, there is a war going on. It's an internal war. There's a struggle. And so I actually think it ends up being kind of a two-layered title that, if you think a little deeper, you get that part of it. So I think that's actually a really great take on the title. I
saw
guess
somebody
50-50.
I saw somebody on Twitter say that these movie titles were told weren't even correct for the movies. That the first one should have been Dawn, the second one should have been War, and the third one should have been Rise. And it made me think of it made me think
you're getting from the movies anyways, like. So I think a backdrop's the perfect way to say it. It's like, yeah, that's kind of what's going on, but deeper than that, it's this bigger story and this bigger timeline of these events. So I think I'm okay with it, but I could see how it would be a little, maybe not disappointing, maybe disappointing. I don't know, confusing for people who aren't as into the movies. I don't know what the right way to put it is.
People are looking for big action movies.
Right.
They should already know by now that this isn't the series for them. Not to interrupt, just to kind of enrich your point. I feel like the first movie really feels like a Planet of the Apes origin story. And the second and third one feel like stories that are just taking place along the way. Like, the first one is the first movie that feels like, hey, this is how the apes took over. And the other two didn't feel like that. They just feel like stories that Caesar's dealing with. right? They're not as much as this is how the Planet of the Apes starts. It's more about these are, conflicts of power or conflicts of war or conflicts of, obviously, like Chris had discussed, different types of racism and bigotry that happens between species or between races or between gender identity and stuff like that. So I feel like the first one is the only one that's really a story about how the Planet of the Apes becomes, and the other ones are just kind of stories that take place in this universe, if that makes sense.
At the same time, I feel like in Dawn especially, though, there was, and Matt Reeves has said this numerous times, there was a desire to explore that moment in time when apes and humans could have coexisted. So I felt like that was one of the more central landmarks in this kind of timeline for Planet of the Apes that I felt
if you were looking for a precursor for the original 1968 Planet of the Apes, you could take out either the second or the third movie and still feel comfortable with where we get.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like Star Wars where it felt like it needed to lead up to the story. It just had its story to tell in the universe of the human versus ape conflict, which I think is interesting as far as that goes. But anyway, Christina, continue. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was going to say the only other thing that I can think to wrap up my review is I enjoyed visually a lot of parts of the movie. There's, scenes where they're riding on horseback. It's like the Four Horsemen scene is what I think of it as. And they're riding through, the jungle, and they're riding on the beach. There's just these scenes that they kind of step back, and you just get this beautiful just environment. You're engulfed in the not just the apes and how great they looked, but how beautiful everything looked. I was curious the whole time watching, where was this film? This is just gorgeous. So there's just moments where I think you appreciate the beauty of the environment they live in and how pure and loving and beautiful that is. And they're dealing with all of this animosity and hate towards, mankind and the apes. And so it's interesting to see the juxtaposition of but if, like you just said, if you explored us living kind of coexisting, this is a beautiful world. We can do this. We can live here. You can live there. There's just that interesting depiction there, I think, between how beautiful the setting is and how terrible what's going on is. So that's one other point I had.
It's also interesting that humans' own hubris caused the situation that they're in, right? They were overconfident at every step of the way, especially in the first two movies. Thinking that they could, they tried to control nature, and then nature completely backlashed against them and caused their own demise. But what would your letter grade be for this?
Oh, yes. I would give it an A.
Solid A.
Nice.
Solid
I like that. Well done.
It helps. Yeah, it helps that I was a fan going in. I'm a fan coming out, so that's always a good thing.
So we already talked about this, but the face masking, the digital makeup technology is just breathtaking. There are so many close-ups. It dares you to complain about it. And, I'm usually, I think I've gone down in history as the biggest visual art, or the biggest, special effects complainer in podcast history. No, I'm joking, but I do complain about it a lot. I think Chris can attest to that, right?
Yes.
You almost always know that you're looking at CGI, and it looked so good in this that I was just stunned. And so many close-ups. I think the two apes that are best fleshed out, obviously Caesar is one of them, and the other one's Maurice.
The orangutan.
And Maurice looks so good too, and there's so many close-ups of Maurice and so many patient shots, especially his first interaction with Nova. It's so patient. And you don't know where it's going or why it's doing what it's doing, but we find out, and we'll obviously talk about that more in spoilers. Also, we haven't talked about the score. Michael Giacchino's score for this.
Oh my gosh, yes!
Is
I gotta
so
forget
heavy
that.
And so, I did read a review that was talking about there's not this Planet of the Apes score that plays. It's always different as it goes along, and it's always set in the movie, and it's very powerful in this movie, especially toward the end of the film. It's interesting that we're rooting for the apes, like Christina said, and this time, before we kind of split the the screen with James Franco and Caesar, and the second one you just put it with Jason Clarke and Caesar. And this one, it's 90% Apes perspective. We get obviously Woody Harrelson's in this movie, and he's the main top billed human in it, but he's lurking in the background for most of the film. Also, Caesar's intro was so good. It was just it was so powerful, and they make him seem like such a legend. And there's a soldier squad. There's soldier squads that's entire goal is just to try to assassinate him. Also, that they're saying the term assassinate with an ape is also just shows you how powerful his presence is in the story. And so, he was so elusive that some soldiers thought he might already be dead. He was a legend, you know. He was a mythical creature almost in this world. Andy Serkis award conversation. Do you think that it's completely
not
out of the
happen.
picture?
Not going to happen.
It's not going to happen again.
No.
Because I think
not ready yet.
I think it's like they give actors that put on all this makeup and turn into a different person. They're like, that's such a huge thing for awards a lot of the times, right? And for this to be ignored is just insane, because the fact that he's a human acting this, you don't think that ever when you're watching it, ever. And if it was a person in actual makeup, you'd be thinking that. So it's hard to believe that this is a person portraying this character, and I don't know. There's something to be said for that. Yeah, this movie is really chilling. It's really, really dark. There's tons of Holocaust imagery in this as well, where it makes you feel, a lot of the similar things that you feel like when you're watching Schindler's List or something like that. And you just feel the depths of suffering. Caesar thought he saw the depth of men's capabilities before in the previous movies, but just humans are so desperate at this point, right? They're literally fighting for the end of their survival completely, and it makes you think, what would you do, right? How evil would you be willing to go to save humanity if you needed to? And humans go evil, and you definitely aren't rooting for humans in any way, shape, or form in this movie, unless you're, I don't know who possibly. I don't even think Donald Trump would be rooting for humans in this movie if he was watching. I don't know. The villain of mankind. I'm just kidding, people. He's cool. No, he's not. But yeah, I also really liked the intro text at the beginning, which is something I've never seen done, where it was explaining the previous movies, and it used the word "rise" in the first part, and then it went to the second part of text, and it said "dawn" on the screen, and I thought it was really stylistic how they did that. I just thought that was interesting.
I do have to say I almost got a little anxiety, though, because the first two were very short and sweet, and that third one was long, and I was like, am I not going to be able to read it in time? I know it's really silly, but I was like, no, I don't want to miss what it says. But they took their time. So anyone who gets anxiety about reading fast enough, you'll be okay.
Yeah, don't crap yourself in the theater.
That's hilarious.
That being said, this movie's not perfect to me. I do not think Woody Harrelson is good in this movie at all. I have major issues with him as an actor in this movie, and I never thought I would be complaining about Woody Harrelson in anything. But there's some things he does in this movie that are just mind-boggling for a movie that's so smart and so sophisticated that it would be so unsophisticated about some things that he does in this movie that it turns into almost Looney Tunes what he's doing. And I also have some other complaints about some other things. So there's some detractions. Of course, I'm going to talk about them. I'll talk about them right off the bat in spoilers and get them out of the way. But this movie still was so powerful watching it. I couldn't stop thinking about it afterward. There's a chance this movie could be in my list at the end of the year. I don't know. It's one of those movies that I'm like, it's going to take perspective. It's going to take some hindsight for me to know where this movie stands on me, because for instance, this movie reminds me a lot of Logan in a lot of ways. And Logan was so powerful to me, and I was like, it's definitely been my top 10 list. And it's kind of left my mind as time has gone on pretty quickly, where I'm not even thinking about Logan anymore. And something like 10 Cloverfield Lane last year, I was thinking of until the end of the year. That was deep in my mind for the entire year. So I don't have a clear front runner of my favorite movie so far this year at all, and I feel like I had that last year. So it's going to be interesting to see where it stays. But that being said, this movie, you got to go watch this movie, right? Like, and it is, it will completely wrap you up in its story. And there's also very little exposition in this. Like, there's very little like, hey, this is what happened. This like characters explaining what had happened to somebody that should already know what's happening, except for a scene with Woody Harrelson, and I'll talk about that when we get to the spoilers. So anyway, I give it what I think is a good enough grade for where I am with this movie, and we'll see how it stands for me in the test of time. I give it a B.
Boom.
So anything else we want to discuss, or I think we want to switch to spoilers?
Let's do it. Let's spoil this king.
Where can people follow you on the internet, just in case we lose some people, Chris Hartwell?
Definitely. You guys can find me on Twitter as well as on YouTube. Simply search Chris Hartwell or The Heartbeat on YouTube, and I would love for you guys to join me over there. It's a party.
And Christina, where can people follow you on the internet?
First of all, Chris, that's a very good play on your name. I love that. That's nice. I love people who have names that can like do things like that with. So kudos to you for being blessed with a wonderful name.
Christina Vanderslice, yours could be the slice of life.
That's so cheesy, and I've found people who have used things like that with Vanderslice. I'm sorry if you use that, but that's very cheesy for Vanderslice. It just doesn't work. It takes like a very rough and rugged and name and just changes it into like a pie, and it's just weird. So, with that being said, you can follow me at K.
Shot down, Dylan.
Yeah. And somehow the heartbeat is a really good use, but the slice of life is not.
The slice of life sounds like I'm going to skip through the fields and like pull flowers and sing songs. Like, it just doesn't sound right.
She's had a long time to think about this, so much longer than I have. So I guess I'll give you that. The Vander slice of life.
No, it doesn't work. Doesn't work. But thank you. I appreciate you trying to help me out.
I got you.
So yeah, K_Vanderslice on Twitter and K Vanderslice on Instagram.
Is there any podcasts that people can follow you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Let me plug away. I'm also on the Legacy of 24 podcast with Dylan. And yeah, you can check us out. I think it airs on Sundays also, right, Dylan? You put it out the same day?
Sunday nights.
So there you go.
And that's at legacy24.com.
Legacy24.com.
For me, you can follow me at Shuckster. That's SCHUCKSTR. Check out our website at thewatchandtalk.com. You can email us at watchandtalk@gmail.com. Our Twitter is at thewatchandtalk, and our Facebook is facebook.com/thewatchandtalk. Next week, we're going to be reviewing Dunkirk, and I'm sure Chris and I are going to be seeing each other because I'm going to Comic-Con, and Chris, you're going to be here for Comic-Con?
Right? I am, and actually, I'm just going to pitch this to you live on the air. I think that we should do that podcast together in person.
Oh, okay. So I have a mixer that can support 2 microphones. I've never recorded with another person in the room with me, ever. I've never recorded.
I know, that's what I'm saying. We should do it, man. It'd be great.
So yeah, I don't know how we're gonna do it, but yeah, maybe we'll pull it off. We'll talk about that. But yeah, I'm assuming that we'll probably get together and do a Comic-Con episode and talk about some of the things that we saw at Comic-Con.
Oh yes, please.
That sounds good. And without further ado, let's switch to spoilers. All right, right off the bat, Chris is in a time crunch, so we're going to have about 10 minutes to discuss things, and we're probably going to lose Chris, and then I'm going to finish discussing things with Christina. I just wanted to bounce some things off of you that were my complaints, Chris, and see what you think, because I have kind of 2 big complaints and 1 kind of complaint. First, I think you guys know what I was talking about Woody Harrelson monologuing his diabolical plans. It took away all fear and terror from him completely. It made me go, it made me look around the theater like, is this happening right now, guys? Are we seeing this happening in this movie? It just took me away from him 100% and never came back.
Well, I think too, like, they were telling Caesar's story. I mean, this is about the apes, right? So this is the story we're telling, and then they tried to rush through telling this other story so that it would fit with the whole overarching picture, but it's like they told it in a few minutes, and it's like, wait, why? Like, there was nothing was set up for that. So It just felt really out of place.
Completely out of place. It was like, there's no reason. First of all, it's interesting, too, that you think the whole time, man, if you just kill them, and humans would survive, even though they wouldn't really necessarily, because we also find out that other apes are being infected, which is interesting, which means that the disease is passing on to apes through humans everywhere. And apes are getting intelligence from it. So that's interesting, or the virus, right? But yeah, it's that they're doing this, and this feels very topical, and I think that this is very pointed. But they're doing it to build a quote unquote wall, which is very glaring for this to happen, because this movie was shot, from beginning to end after Donald Trump had proposed his wall, and I think that's very glaring. That I don't think it's any coincidence. Do you? I mean, is that any coincidence that they had the wall be such a?
I had not made that connection at all, but hey, maybe.
All right. But yeah, his monologuing was ridiculous, and this other thing that's just as glaring for me is the guards. None of the things should have happened, because the guard should have been on watch, and I guess we're led to believe they have finite resources, but this was just atrocious what the apes were able to do without guards. And then the guard gets poop thrown at him, and then he goes unguarded without telling anybody, goes into the cage full of something that wants to cause the extinction of your race.
If you had poop thrown at your face, Dylan, you would do just about anything.
I
would report back. I would report back to my people and say, hey, I'm going in there, or go up to the cage and be like, I'm going to start shooting you guys through the cage one at a time until you guys tell me who did it.
Yeah, but at that point, he felt like they had already crushed the apes. Like, he felt like their leader is weak and they're not eating. You know what I mean? They already felt superior. So I think he felt a little more invincible than he obviously,
Nice. I like that, Christina. I like that. Sure. That's good.
Fair enough. But then Nova walking into the camp, and
that was not being seen. That was a little.
And all of the apes being able to escape through a hole, and the way that they did things, it just. I kept saying, where are the guards? Why are the guards allowing this? The guards allowed so many things that were just like, does not make sense. You'd think that they would have, they would use some of their finite resources to guarding these.
Yeah,
apes.
I also think, though, it was kind of trying to show a little undertone of like how smart the apes are becoming and how stupid the humans are becoming.
Sure.
And so like it's so easy for them to escape. This was like a really easy escape, and maybe that was part of the point.
Was that part of the point of Nova walking in? Was that showing that she is simple?
I was a little confused by that moment, because for me, I thought that moment was going to turn into was like this like powerful moment of this girl walking in, them seeing her and them responding in a different way. But the fact that she walked in and wasn't seen, that kind of turned that moment on my head. I'm like, wait, what exactly is happening here? So yeah, I felt like that didn't line up with what I thought was going to happen.
The reveal of her name being Nova because of the Chevy Nova emblem too was really cheesy for me as well. Not to just pile on. I swear I'm going to get the negativity out of the way very quickly. But going back to Woody Harrelson, the thing I did like about him was his obsession with history and his place in it. Like, I really found that fascinating, and I feel like if I was a diabolical, genocidal, evil soldier, commander, whatever, general, I would probably be thinking about my place in history a lot too. Right? I think about all the time, like every time a president's elected, I think of their place in history and where history is going to judge them and how things are going to be thought of and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool that they continued that theme. Another thing. Very cliche kind of allegory of the mercy of the main character coming back to bite them in the butt later. Exact same thing that happened in Saving Private Ryan happens in this. This character that ends up killing Caesar was given a ton of screen time, but no perspective. Yeah,
that was interesting to me. I felt like I wanted to better understand where exactly he was coming from, or at least better understand why what he felt after he shot that arrow there at the end.
Right. Or what led up to him shooting the arrow, because it seemed like he gained respect for Caesar when Caesar spared him.
Right.
And we never understood what he was thinking ever, but he ends up killing Caesar, which makes this tragic tale. Takes a lot of the bite out of it for me, because I feel like they should have shown what was going on in his mind, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I don't really get what the arc he was going through.
I felt the same way about that too. I was actually going to say specifically about the Woody Harrelson character, though. I'm pretty sure that at least part of that monologue was given to him because of just the interaction between Woody Harrelson and Matt Reeves, the director. Because I guess originally the character of the Colonel had even less to do, less to say, and was just a little bit more one-sided, overt villain. And it sounded like Woody wanted a bit more kind of meat to sink his teeth into, but a bit more of a backstory, a bit more motivation. And so maybe part of the reason that felt so tacked on, so kind of last minute, was because maybe it actually was. I mean, I don't have any confirmation of that, but just having read some of the interviews and stuff like that, I feel like that might have been what led to that.
One final thing was, I kind of also didn't get Nova. She followed the apes that killed her dad, but then she cried.
Well,
she cried for Lucas
that's what I was
when
gonna say.
he died, but she didn't cry
And she
for
only
her
knew him
father.
for like.
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting. Also, and I can't get why that would be the case. Like with her father, almost like she was like, "Okay, take me with you guys because I don't want to stay here." It was weird.
Yeah.
This movie's so
I'm not
smart.
sure.
If it changed these like 3 or 4 things, like they could have done something to explain why, or they could have cleverly made this escape happen while guards were paying attention, and they could have cleverly. They didn't have to make her cry for Lucas dying. You know, I think
and it was actually a really emotional cry, and I started crying because you know how emotional I get because it was so emotional, and I was like, "That's not. You've only known him for a day."
Well, this is my thought behind that.
She's simple, like that they're losing their brains.
No. I definitely read into it that her dad wasn't a great guy. I don't think that there was anything super horrible going on. Maybe not that much, but it felt like the fact that they lived in that really crummy area.
Sure.
When they found her doll was tossed on the ground. They had different close-ups of the place that she lived in, and it was clearly run down and not great at all. And probably this man's need to survive, however possible, led to him just neglecting his daughter at the very least. And the fact that just previous to the gorilla who dying, he puts that flower in her hair. And kind of had that father-daughter moment that I'm sure she never got from her actual dad. So probably there was like in that moment this like experience, and also from Maurice the orangutan, like experiencing a level of care and intention that her biological dad never gave her. So that's kind of how I read into that.
One final thing I want to say before we let you go, Chris, is I also didn't like that there was that the virus mutated into muting them. I liked the idea that humans were so separated from their civilization that they had, through generations, just forgotten language, forgotten how to talk or the ability to talk, and they started evolving backwards. Instead of rather a virus taking away their ability to talk. So by the time we get to Charlton Heston's Planet of the Apes, they don't talk. But I always took that as they just hadn't needed language anymore because they had been so far away from civilization. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure, and I guess I can agree with that, but at the same time, I love the idea. I love the idea of someone who, you know, is kind of like the most extreme bigot in the world, that being the Colonel, having to suddenly realize that he's become the very thing that he hated. I don't know why this example's in mind, maybe because I rewatched this movie recently, but for me, it was almost like the if you guys have seen American Beauty. There's the Chris Cooper character who has so much hatred towards homosexuals for a very specific reason, and that felt appropriate. It almost felt like, well, that's why this person bucks against it so hard, and the fact that he has to then endure the very thing that he hates so much, I think is, I don't know, it's poetic.
Yeah, it would have been pretty badass to see Caesar just shoot him in the head, though. But I guess
that's not his character arc, Dylan.
Yeah, he's begging to be shot, and then he has to do it himself. But anyway, Chris, we'll let you go, and then Christy and I will wrap up our conversation. Wish we could still keep you, but obviously, you know,
absolutely
gotta go.
Always great being with you guys. Excellent to meet you, Christina. Have a good one.
Nice meeting you as well.
I'll see you in a couple days. Chris.
Yes, can't wait.
All right.
I work downtown, so maybe I'll see you guys.
Oh, rocking.
We're gonna party up. All right. So Christina.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I want to talk about the intro, the beginning of the movie.
Oh yeah.
Because I was bought into this movie within 2 minutes.
Yeah. Oh well, when they walk through and it's like, are you talking about the writing or like where it says like monkey killer and they're just like walking
monkey
through?
killer, and then the other helmet said endangered species.
Yeah, that one.
Beautifully set the tone for the opening sequence. When have we ever even considered ourselves endangered species?
Endangered species.
Genius.
Yeah.
I love
Absolutely.
it. And then they're looking for apes, and they're spying through the trees, and then from behind you see the gorilla, and you're like, oh, this dude's about to get ripped to shreds.
Yeah, when he taps him.
And he taps him on the shoulder and points, and the. That's early on in the movie, but there's nothing that can change that shocking moment for you so early on. It was not a shocking moment like you're stunned and shaking in your seat, but it's like, huh?
But you thought right there the war was like there was gonna be a battle right there. He was gonna grab him and smash him or something.
And then you're thinking, oh my god, these apes are working with the humans against other apes. This is nuts what's going on right now. What the hell? And I don't feel like the trailer is spoiled. I didn't pay attention super close, but I don't think the trailer is spoiled that they worked together. So I also was like...
No, they did a great... Actually, I have something to say about the trailers. I think they did a great job with the trailers not giving away the movie. I didn't know I was going in for more of the drama and the storytelling. I thought I was going in for a little more of the war because the trailers kind of played on a little bit of the war part of it. So I think that was actually really smart, and it made it where you don't feel like you waste. Sometimes I hate trailers because they just like...
Christina, you're telling me I literally avoid trailers as much as I can.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen a trailer for Dunkirk that we're seeing. I still haven't seen a trailer for that. I've gotten up and left the theater like 4 times to not see a trailer for Dunkirk because I'm avoiding it that bad. Because I want a moment like I got with War of the Planet of the Apes when the gorilla tapped him, because they made you purposely shot it to make you think that this person's about to get mauled by a gorilla, and all of a sudden it taps him, and it's such a great confusion. And then, like I said, the intro to Caesar, and the guy was saying his prayer, saying, "I'm not going to make it out of this. I'm dead." And they think they're on top of things, and then all of a sudden they just get swarmed with the arrows raining from the sky, and you think they're going to be dead. And to see Caesar, and also Caesar is old in this movie.
Yeah, I was going to say he's looking old. Yeah,
he's looking like
when they said he had a new little guy. I was like, wow, he's old.
It's kind of a Baron Trump going on right there. I don't know why Donald Trump gets brought up on this movie about bigotry and racism, but anyway, I also love Maurice's. I skimmed through it quickly because I was trying to get through some bullet points with Chris. Loved Maurice's interactions. By the way, Maurice is motion captured, acted by a female.
I know. I didn't know that until recently, and I was like, "That's so something about that's just really awesome." You just don't assume it's a female, so it was cool to see.
She killed the audition for Maurice better than a male actor for a male.
You go, girl.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And also, he's fleshed out more than any other ape than Caesar by far. And I love the scene. The best moment that he had in the entire trilogy was when Caesar says, "We can't take Nova with us," and that Maurice says, "I understand, but I can't leave her."
Yeah.
It's a killer moment. And
that's it. And then you see them writing. It's like, and they don't have to go into it more. They don't have to explain more. They don't have to argue longer. It's like, this is it. These are the 2 options. And sorry. Yeah. I love that.
You can go on without me because I'm not going to leave her. And I love that when that was a Jack Bauer moment, right? Where you're like, this is the way things are going to be, just end the argument. And that was a line to end the argument. What do you think about the Koba dreams? That he had PTSD from them. I loved it. I loved it that he was being haunted by almost the devil on his shoulder, right?
Yeah,
which was
and I thought it was great for his character. I think Chris touched on it earlier, maybe you did, but just saying like maybe he's not as pure and as perfect as we all have believed him to be and want him to be. We want him to stay like just fighting for the right reasons, but put in this situation, you just lost the people. I mean, I literally like was so sad for the moment where he lost like people that he loves and cares about. His son just came back, and that same night he loses them. So it's interesting to see how.
And you felt
oh my gosh, yeah.
When they died, you were like, oh my god, like I hate Woody Harrelson. I hate you felt that you wanted to get revenge too, right?
Yeah, and the fact that you knew, like, when he was jumping out to the water and, like, climbing up, you knew that was a bad idea, but you wanted him to get Woody Harrelson so bad that you were okay with him basically completely risking his life because of that emotion that he felt in that moment. So The Koba thing I think was really interesting because of all that. It's like there's all in all of us, there's that part where there becomes a point where you are no longer fighting for everyone else. You are fighting for yourself and what happened to you. And I think it was interesting to see him have to try and separate those two feelings. How he realized, like, I'm not maybe as perfect as everyone thinks I am, So I thought that was a good way to show that.
Not only was his family's death heartbreaking, but Cornelius's attachment to him. And Cornelius is the name of one of the apes in Charlton Heston's. It cannot be the same one, though, because that takes place in the year like 3900 or something like that, almost the year 4000. Mm-hmm. So it couldn't be. But sometimes you get the impression that this is... I get the idea that this is similar to like a start of almost a religion, right? Because Caesar is worshipped, if I remember correctly, and you kind of think that the son of him is kind of like somebody naming their kid Jesus or Jesus now. Like it's something that happened. So that's how I, kind of get, or, a lot of biblical names people get named, John and...
Right, Mary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I one thing I never understood also really is how some apes can't talk. Most apes can't talk.
I thought that was weird too. Like and then at the end, but I think
like
it's
his
just
son
because
should be
it's
able to
still,
talk.
Right, but I think it's because they're still, as the humans are still going down, the demising path, they're still rising. So I think it's just that there's still, that's how I took it. Because I think it's weird also, but I think that makes sense.
So, Donkey Kong. They kind of, they're all called Donkey, but the main donkey we see, how he had that kind of Darth Vader scene where he's dealing with, the Emperor shocking Luke Skywalker and then decides to do the right thing at the end. Spoiler alert for Return of the Jedi. But I love that scene where then
I did too.
He gets the dude with the rocket launcher. And that's going to happen. It was
the whole thing. But I actually thought he was going to do what Caesar was trying to do. So I thought he was going to hit the rocket launcher to that thing, to get it to explode. Yeah. And instead he shoots the guy. So I think it was kind of it was telegraphed, but it was still kind of interesting. And then I loved how then he just stands there and stares at him when he knows he's about to die. Like that was so impactful.
Instead of trying to kill the other soldiers around him, he just I just don't think he had any fight left in him. That's where you get the impression, right? You're like, I'm going to save Caesar. This is the right thing to do, and I don't want to live anymore. Yeah. Like it seemed like he was committing suicide when he really could have turned around and ripped that dude. He could rip his head off, like literally, but he just didn't. You just get the impression he didn't want to. And
it almost is like he knew he had gone so far in the wrong direction that there was no point anymore.
Yeah. It's not like he wanted to go and hang out with them after.
Right. Yeah. Like there was no really making up for what he did.
Right, and just like I loved the character Winter.
Yeah.
The albino gorilla, where that showed him scared and then
I knew, I don't want to say that I knew because I like to predict, but like I knew something was up with like, oh, he hit me and got away. It's like, what? How did he get away so easily? Like you're a pretty big gorilla.
His reaction to because of you, my son and wife were killed.
Yeah.
Do you think it's interesting that he calls it wife
as opposed to
mate or partner, or that they would adopt the human word of husband and wife? Did they actually get married?
They should have shown it. It should have been a prequel.
Seriously. Here's another weird thing. I know this is silly, but they don't show apes kiss. Like, because I was like, are they going to show them kiss? This will be weird. And what they do is they show them...
It did get a little weird.
They show them embrace, and they rub their foreheads against each other.
Right, but it did get, that part was a little cheesy when his son came back and went up to what's her name, Lake, and then there was like the waterfall in the background, and it kind of got like, I was like, where is this gonna go? So I'm glad it just like wrapped up.
By the way,
a little weird.
I feel like Lake was fleshed out way more than Caesar's wife ever was.
Yeah, agreed.
And Caesar's wife is played by Judy Greer. She's actually a really good actress, and it was interesting that she just got relegated to kind of a background role. Final thing I want to talk about, because I know you love this. Bad Ape. Well, first of all, I really liked when he kept saying, don't touch, when Nova was messing with things. Thought that was so funny and kooky and weird. And
because it was just like random, and he would like skip over there and grab it.
Right. And then just go back to the conversation. And then finally, when he was like, "Oh, I don't want to go over there," no, she can touch this. She can go ahead and play with this. Fine, that's fine. And then lastly, when he kind of came out in this vest and with his beanie on, and he gave a thumbs up, that was probably
so
if I could
good.
just replay that scene over and over again, I would, because
And for the first time, like to
Yes.
replay it and have the
Yes.
same first emotion about it. Yes.
And there was laughter, but it wasn't laughter like they're trying too hard to be funny. This just character is weird, and I love when
and just
he's
so like kooky.
yeah, and he goes through an arc, right? He learns his own bravery throughout the
Yeah, and has to start to relate to these other, this other species of apes that he hasn't been around. So he's like this really humanized, like kind of goofy comedian type ape, and they're like more serious and deep. And so he has to find a way to like without talking to them, and he doesn't do the sign language thing. So it's like I thought it was a really interesting addition to the story.
We find out that Carrot Top was his owner before the apocalypse. I think that would make a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, he had that like such a kooky. There was a point like I thought that was all really funny, and I was in the theater, it was quiet, and this one guy just laughs out so hard. Like, that's how I felt inside, and I wanted the whole theater to like just die laughing. But that was I
think I belted out a couple.
Yeah.
Also, did you call that was an ape? Because I did. It went way too long without showing a person.
A face.
I was like, this has to be an ape.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that.
I didn't. I don't know that I really was thinking about it too much, but I didn't think about it too much. But then I was like, okay, that makes perfect sense.
Also, Luca yelled out at him when he sees him. He screamed and let him have a chance to start running instead of just pouncing him.
Yeah.
I was like, you should have just pounced him, bro. Like, but yeah, that's just neither here or there. But in general, I have to say, which is important for me for a movie. Do I want to rewatch this? Immediately. I would rewatch this right now. I can't wait to rewatch it. So that's a big sign for the enjoyment of the movie as well. Those complaints that I had, they didn't need to happen. I just feel like it was so easy to not have those things happen, and this movie would have been an A territory for me. It didn't take away from the final product, but I wanted to hate Woody Harrelson more toward the end. The monologuing took away the scariness from it. I also wanted to feel like they worked really hard to escape, and they kind of too conveniently escaped. It didn't make me feel like here's the things I did feel. I felt their suffering. I felt Caesar's suffering. I felt Caesar's at least hatred toward Woody Harrelson's character. I felt the love of the community of the apes and the desperation of humans. Those are all things I felt, but the guard situation was a huge issue for me, and Woody Harrelson monologuing, and just kind of like his character kind of the edge wore off from him really quickly for me, and I just wish that it didn't. I wish that I hated him till the end. I wish that when he died, I was like, oh yes, but I was kind of like, all right, die, and we're gonna move on.
Bye. Well, and also like it's interesting that Chris said that maybe it spawned from him wanting more, but it almost feels like if he would have had less, it would have maintained that like elusive, oh, this guy was just evil. Like honestly, the scene where they're chanting and they're marching and he's shaving his head, like how much I feel like more powerful would those scenes be in your mind if you didn't have that stretch of time where it was kind of like, well, this is a little weird or kind of out of place, or oh, it's not as scary or as intimidating as you thought, So like I think it kind of didn't do justice to like those big iconic scenes that are supposed to like make you really feel something.
Because that was a killer scene. That
a great
shaving
scene.
his head
like
and
how
them all chanting him.
and just like how crazy. Yeah, he's just like a crazy man. They're doing it until he says, like it was just
He looked like Ray Fiennes in Schindler's List from his tower.
Yeah. Right.
The same situation that he had. They definitely took a lot of influence from Schindler's List in this movie. A lot of it. And also the fact that that doll was what gave him the mutant disease. Was ironic too. It just was weird that she came in like that. It was just weird. That was odd.
Yeah, I thought for sure she was gonna get caught.
Me
so
too.
I thought it was strange that she was just like prancing around like no big deal. I'm just gonna go give them food, get water. The apes are making noises. Like I feel like that would be way more suspicious.
Very odd. And then, but how about that moment when you think he's gonna get a sip of water and then
oh, that was messed up.
Donkey
that was dirty.
And I love the moment too when he's like, "You let them call you donkey."
Yeah.
He's like, I do whatever I can survive. It's also kind of weird that they teamed up with humans because the reason that Kubo went crazy is he hated humans so much.
Right, and now his like Swackies,
and now they're teaming up with them. But it just goes to show that they have their own self-perseverance, and there's characters in shows we love, like Game of Thrones. There's lots of self-preservation characters in that and stuff like that. So, anyway, yeah, I guess that kind of wraps things up. Anything else you want to discuss, or did we cover everything?
I think we covered it.
I think we covered everything without going second by second like
two.
We do with
two.
Anyway, thank you. I'm glad you came on. This is fun, right?
You're welcome. Yeah, it's very fun, and it's fun to watch a movie with a little bit of a critic's lens because I normally just watch it I enjoy the movies. I enjoy closing my brain off for a little while, but it was fun to kind of watch it a little more analytical. So
when you have to discuss this.
You pay attention to things that you wouldn't have maybe, and it actually makes you appreciate more of the movie, I think, than you would. So maybe everyone should just watch a movie thinking that you're going to discuss it with somebody later, even if you never do. Because I feel like you're going to pick up on things that maybe you wouldn't pick up on normally.
And what people need to understand, too, is once you start doing that, too, you do start picking up...
your brain.
You also start picking up on things that would make the movie better. So when I'm sitting there and saying I don't like these things, it's not to sit there and bash on the movie. It's to say... the movie, I think, would have been better for me, would have worked better for me. But that doesn't mean it would have worked better for everybody. So I can only say what would have worked better for me in those things. And but in general, this movie, this trilogy is amazing. Also, to go in line with that, how you kind of have to have an analytical brain when you know you're going to talk about it. A lot of people ask me why don't podcasts about Game of Thrones. Hell no. I want to just enjoy Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
It's the one show that I just want to sit back and enjoy and be like, oh my God, I love this, and not worry about having to sound smart. Like
That's so funny. I was just
enjoy
saying
it, right?
that.
Like I'm so, I don't know, I'm not so concerned with sounding smart because I'm the smartest person in the world, obviously.
Right,
obviously. But I just don't.
But there
have to
are
worry
some
about
shows where you just want to be a fan and just watch it and relax and not think about like having to be analytical and deep. And you already think that way, so you'll catch all the things you want to catch, but you don't have to sit there and explain to somebody else all of those things.
I think after this season of Game of Thrones, though, I'll probably do a bonus episode and just discuss the whole season.
Yeah.
And I'm going to implore you to come and join us for that.
I'm a Game of Thronesy. I don't even know.
Is that the term? Like a Trekkie?
That is not the official term. That is not the official term, but I'm starting it.
A Throny or a Godder?
Thronesy. I'm gonna go Thronesy.
Thronesy. It just does not sound right. Sounds like a robe.
I'm part of my own.
Like a robe is a Thronesy.
I'm gonna throw on this Thronesy.
I'm gonna put on this Thronesy. Anyway, why don't you tell people again where they can follow you on the internet? And I implore you guys to follow her. Christina's awesome.
K_Vanderslice on Instagram. Oh no, Twitter. Now I'm confused. And K Vanderslice on Instagram. There's a long story behind that. And listen to the Legacy of 24, and you might find out.
It's not that interesting a story. K Vanderslice wasn't available, so she took K_Vanderslice.
Dang, Dylan just took away all the fun.
This riveting tale.
That was a big reveal.
It's a cautionary tale. Make sure to adopt your handles early on new social media platforms. For me, you can follow me at Shuckster. That's SCHUCKSTR. You can listen to both of us talk about 24 Legacy. She hasn't seen it. She hasn't seen 24. I have. And we also have another friend that joins us that has not seen it. So if you have not seen the show, hey, there's no better time to check it out and listen along with us. And we discuss every episode, and you get to hear their predictions and stuff like that as it goes along. I guess we should have explained that before the spoiler section, but because we lose some people. We lose half the people when we switch to the spoiler section. But anyway, that's at thelegacy24.com. Go to thewatchandtalk.com. You can go to facebook.com/thewatchandtalk, Twitter at thewatchandtalk, or email us at thewatchandtalk@gmail.com. Next week, we're reviewing Dunkirk, so come back and check that out. And that's it. I'm Dylan Shuck.
I'm Christina Vanderslice.
And we'll see you next week. All right, dog.
Are you no longer live?
No, I got it. Bye, guys. I'm going to cut this off so we can talk. Bye.